The truth is that despite what they claim, Mudahar and Carl are not journalists, accountants, lawyers, or even engineers. They're YouTubers.
Jesus Christ.
I had a nickel for every time a YouTuber who fucked up 2 years ago came back and tried to address everything and make things right. I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it is weird that it happened twice in the same week. So Gerard the Completionist is back. 2 years after the whole charity fraud scandal thing erupted, he did have a Department of Justice investigation go into his charity, and according to the video he just released, You Deserve Answers is the name of it. It seems the investigation has concluded. He said that he's been trying to reach out to them for a while for like a final interview they wanted to conduct, but he hasn't heard from them in a long time. So regardless, he says he waited this long because of legal reasons, and he's finally able to talk about some stuff, and he breaks down a lot of criticisms, concerns, questions that people have been levying against him since all this stuff started. I do have some hesitations about it as well. I'm coming at it a little bit more gently than I do with other channels because I thought it was pretty solid the way that he addressed a lot of claims against him. He had this tone of accountability and he sounded very genuine. He seemed to address a lot of concerns people were having regarding, the donations not being met. That was people's hard-earned money, your hard-earned money that should have been donated and it wasn't. And full stop, point blank period. He doesn't sit here and try to make excuses. He does provide backstory and context behind Open Hand Foundation and choices that were made, as well as how much authority he actually had in the situation, which the way that he describes everything, it sounds like he wasn't as important of a person in the Open Hand Foundation as I had originally thought personally. I was of the impression that he was one of the big decision makers, and what it actually turned out being was he was a member of the board of directors. He became a part of it later in an official capacity. And that is where he claims a lot of this starts breaking down communication-wise. It's still fucked up that you're sitting on $600,000, you're accumulating these donations over the course of a decade, and you're not donating them. The reason that he gives is pretty compelling if you know how 501c3s work and how restricted versus unrestricted donations pan out. But even with him giving this context, he doesn't use it as a shield to hide behind and say, oh, look, you can't blame me because I wasn't even that important. What he does say is, this is my situation and this is my perspective. However, this should never have happened and we should not have taken anybody's money when it wasn't being donated.
Even if we never broke the law, serious moral mistakes were still made by myself and the foundation. The Open Hand took far too long to donate. We never explained why it took so long until after everyone called us out. And I lied about this for all of Indieland's years, both knowingly in 2023 and unknowingly in all the years before. But it doesn't matter what kind of explanation either I or anyone else involved might provide. This happened, and rightfully so, it pissed off everyone. To my viewers and donors, friends and collaborators, I am so sorry for hiding the truth. It was selfish, full stop. I want you all to have the context as to how everything happened, but nothing I've said so far is an excuse, and neither is anything else in this video. All of this is on me.
So I personally really appreciated this because, again, this is what I expect from a YouTuber apology, taking accountability and just flat out saying, yeah, what happened was fucked up. That's what I expect. I don't want to hear a bunch of whiny, wibbly wobbly bullshit in the middle of all this. So that I could 100% respect. However, there are still a lot of hesitations around some of the claims that he makes in this video. I do think that Carl and Muda were slimy and snaky in the background. For example, he mentions the call he was going to have with Muda after he found out, Carl was doing this investigation or was asking questions about what was going on with Open Hand. Later on, he has a call with Mudahar and he basically gets jumped because Carl wasn't supposed to be in there. It was supposed to be just him and Mudahar, which he explains here.
A week after Indieland 2023 had wrapped up, and before I could get back to the donation efforts and conversations I was having, my heart stopped when I saw an email to the Open Hand Foundation came from a one Carl Jobst. A few days later, on November 10th, I received a message from another creator, Mudahar Anas, also known as Some Ordinary Gamers. I respected and trusted Mudahar, so when he asked if I wanted to hop on a Discord call to talk about a discrepancy with some of the Open Hand Foundation's publicly available documents, I agreed, thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe we could chat this out and clear the air, no problem. Mudahar never once asked about the laws or regulations that Carl had asked about, so I had no reason to think they were collaborating together, especially since they had no prior history together online. I hopped on the call, assuming that this would just be the two of us, until my surprise, I saw Carl join. The rest of what's publicly available to all of you is essentially me having a panic attack while trying to be transparent with two creators I respected at the time, all at the behest of throwing my friends and family under several buses.
So with that, it's disappointing but not surprising because both of them have shown snake behavior. There has been a bit of back and forth on Carl and Muda's investigation in general. Muda did walk people through how to report the Open Hand Foundation, which I think could have been a breach because we've talked about it before where people go too far, like Lus trying to report Carl for fraudulent activity. However, in this case, I think it was okay because none of the money had been donated. If you're going to take $600,000 from people and not donate it without explaining why within the time period that money's been taken, that warrants an investigation. And I think that while normally that would definitely be an overstep for a YouTuber to do that, in this case it doesn't bother me as much. However, there was one part that did piss me off a bit. It was Gerard talking about Carl and his mom and his stepmom and his dad and all this shit. So there's a bunch of these Discord screenshots that he puts in the video. Here's what Gerard's saying that Carl did.
Now there's one more thing that I want to get ahead of here. Just a couple of years before my mom passed away, my dad started dating his now current wife while still being married to my mom. When you're committed to caring for someone with dementia for over a decade, life gets extremely complicated. My mom was at least 10 years into getting sick, and she was barely communicative at this point. My dad somehow found love at his senior age with an amazing woman who would go on to help our family take care of my mom well into her final days. I should not have to explain what I feel is no one's business but my family's. Unfortunately, there's Discord receipts of Carl stating that this was the last bit of family stuff that he was holding back, presumably until I decided to respond again, repeatedly referring to my stepmom as a mistress in my dad's supposed affair. Considering he used this exact tactic against Billy Mitchell, accusing his current wife of being nothing but a mistress in Billy's alleged affair, I have no doubt in my mind that Carl would and might still try and use this against me in the future. It doesn't matter how much Carl tries to twist the truth here. There is no grand conspiracy here.
Back when all this shit was happening in December of 2023, we see him in his Discord saying pretty fucked shit about Gerard's dad. He's making these claims as if Gerard's father was abusive towards his mother, who was obviously sick. Then later on, he's saying that Gerard's dad cheated with the stepmother, which Gerard explains. I empathize with Gerard talking about how life gets complicated in situations like this, and his dad being able to find love in the middle of all of this stuff, and I don't think that that's cheating at all. When the mother is not there anymore, she's gone. At that point, she was gone. And the stepmother comes in and is assisting them with end-of-life care. She was there for that family and was a supportive member of the family. She wasn't just some hussy that showed up and swept Gerard's dad off his feet. So for Carl to diminish her as just being a mistress, it's just like, Carl, you gotta leave other people's wives out of this shit. And what's weird is in a later screenshot, Carl's saying, I never said it was cheating. And then this person has a brain and says, mistress kind of implies that. Constantly saying mistress over and over again. What do you think you're trying to communicate to the audience? Like, you're clearly setting it up like he was having an affair. That's what a mistress is. That's what the other woman is. And it sounds like that wasn't the case at all with the family, especially considering the fact that she was there and helping with end-of-life care. I think that it would have been really slimy of Carl to put it in. I'm glad that he didn't. And I do understand why people are criticizing this point being brought up at all because it wasn't in Carl's video. But I actually have to side with Gerard on this one because we've seen seen Carl make the same argument regarding Billy Mitchell's second wife. He has this petty little demon inside of him that just peeks out in bits and pieces, and you didn't really notice it before, but especially after that second Billy Mitchell response that he did, where he goes after this completely unrelated person to this conflict. I am disappointed but not surprised Carl brought up the second wife of Gerard's father in the Discord. I'm just glad he didn't add that to his initial video. So I understand why Gerard brought it up, but it is kind of odd. So I have to say that overall, the tonality of the response video I felt was really solid, but I know that it's a pretty divided response. A lot of people in Gerard's comment section are very positive and are very supportive of him, much like if you look at Carl Job's comment section and his initial responses, the immediate response was very supportive. A lot of his diehards were in the chat. As time went on, the backlash kind of mounted and that changed. I'm curious to see if that's going to happen with Gerard's response or if enough people are going to care enough to actually respond. I am excited because Carl said he is going to respond to it. I hope Mutahar tries to respond to it as well. So it looks like the Gerard Completionist drama is just now ramping up and we have exclusive front row seats. So I'm excited to see how this falls out. I'm excited to see how all of this comes together at the end. I will obviously keep you guys updated, but for now, enjoy the rest of your weekend and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.